It's your boy Heemz, and guys, we are back with another video. Today, we're about to get into the one and only review for The Matrix. OMG. That, by far, was really good. I like how they sat there and put that together. Because literally, after that, honestly, Matrix has been one of the biggest and one of the most iconic films of all time. Literally, you see everything has that little generic, that little cameo appearance. Up to I remember Conker's Bad Fur Day. I remember them using that same Matrix bullet time move. So every little thing that you see out here, the fight scenes, the bullet time, the dodging, the memes, all the stuff that came out over years. And for them to actually come at the Wachowskis to pull that off, by far they did really good. There was a lot of controversies when I sat there and saw some of the articles. A lot of people were like, it wasn't that great. Whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. It felt like it was a cash grab. But all in all, though, I thought for myself, it was a really good movie because basically the way they did it, because they left that out there, towards the end. If you remember in Matrix Revolutions, you remember at the end where Neal sacrifices himself. And then after that, they're like, take him. Take him to where? Where exactly was he going? Was they just going to dump him out? And they never showed anything. It's one thing if they would have had maybe a cutscene or something, just showed them dump of the bodies and maybe even show the rest of the bodies and maybe these were the quote unquote the ones. But they didn't do that. Then on top of that, they never show. You just automatically just assume that Trinity is dead. But the fact that they even recover her body and even gave more meaning to it made it that much more exciting. And the way they did it, it was a huge mind twist the way Warner Brothers and everybody did that, because it basically starts off and you got all these characters. They're basically redoing the very beginning of the Matrix, when Trinity first arrived. It's this new set of a group of people, and they're trying to basically see the history. Then on top of that, they had the one dude, and I can't remember his name, but he plays as basically Agent Smith at that time, but he's also Morpheus. And so they basically got him out of that, jumped him out. They basically are in the process of looking for the one. And then they cut to Neal, and basically he's this top game designer. He basically, his life experiences, and I like that mind screw because they basically did it like this. It was his life was basically in front of him, but they actually, his whole memories, everything, they did it in a way to where everything that actually happened to him, but he wasn't aware that he just simply, to him, it was all just basically a dream, an idea, and a concept. And one thing I kept paying attention to at times when they actually pan to Keanu Reeves' character Neal, you literally see every time he interacts with anything anything that has a reflection, it's a different reflection of another person. It's an older person. So I was wondering where they were going with that, as if, are they saying that he is actually much older than what his appearance is showing? Or is it that they simply have him, as far as his outer part of him, or just him, his skin is just basically as disguised as somebody else? Because what is he looking at too when it comes to looking in the mirror? Then at one point he actually goes to, what is it? The CEO, the person that he's working for. You could sense it was some kind of dark little twist, and they kept doing little smidges of his interactions, or what he's trying to differentiate between either potentially being his actual memories to actually just his ideas for the game design. But you see him kind of correlating that in between with Agent Smith. And then so he actually goes to hang out, get a drink. He actually runs into Trinity. And it's that immediate, as if hey, have we met before? And I did. And then so they sat there at one point, and everybody's trying to hack and get him in there. He's still kind of going through it. But now it's it's really taking a toll on him. His memories is it's actually coming in stronger and stronger between him with the so-called game design, and it's it's all starting to mesh for him. Then at one point in time, everybody tries to basically try to talk to him. Even Morpheus comes back to him, and he basically offers him the whole red pill, blue pill. Ooh, before that, throughout this time, he goes back to the actor, or Neil Patrick Harris, who actually plays as his basically his counselor. But what I liked was the subtle thing in there, and that was the blue glass frame, which if you think about it, was represent like, the red pill where, hey, if you want to go deeper into the rabbit hole, you can go ahead and do this. Or you can stay within the matrix, i.e. the blue, or just go back to like everything was before. And that was basically what him as a quote unquote counselor was supposed to be, to basically keep him stuck. So then at some point in time, Morpheus runs into him. And that was even a twist too, because it was like, I was hoping that they was going to get Lawrence Fishburne, but for whatever reason that didn't happen. Maybe for both behind maybe his idea or what the company or the brothers actually had for him. But I still like the fact that they incorporated him in there. Now, one key thing that I noticed why they did that, and that could very well be because so after the movie, there was actually an online game of the Matrix. Now, according to Wikipedia and according to other sites, that game was supposed to be canon to the series. So that being said, leading up to what we will find out later was that Morpheus died. Now, they don't clarify in the movie exactly how he died, but basically it's some kind of program, some kind of thing that they did, but like it acts just like Morpheus. He basically emulates him like a younger version. So yeah, I didn't see Lawrence Fishburne, but then like even going back into it, so he's at this point where like after meeting Trinity, these feelings are rushing in. He feels a connection to her. His mind is racing. You still see the reflection of like another person in the mirror. Morpheus runs into him while he was at work, tries to get him to take the red pill. He really don't want to. He's freaking out because at this point, like his mind was just like completely scattered. He's unsure of himself. He was already kind of like, I don't know, it's like Agents or Mr. Anderson or whatever. Like, his character at the time, it was like, back in the early 90s, watching the beginning, he was still, for the most part, unsure, but he had a certain confidence. This dude was just like his role then now was like, he just really, like, it's like you could see the degradation from where he was before or how his character diminished, but more or less, like, as far as, like, mentally and emotionally and even confidence, even to be back to being Mr. Smith. The Mr. Smith that was in the early 90s was more confident and was a rebel and doing stuff compared to where this one is at this point in his life, being a game developer, doing all this and that. So yeah, he was freaking out with Morpheus. He didn't want to take the pill. Then at one point there's like a shootout, and then the CEO actually starts having his memories flood, and he's Agent Smith. And I was like, they bringing him back. And he just looks and he's like, Mr. Anderson. And then like he just starts trying to take him out, and he's sitting there freaking out like, yo, what's going on? He's trying to hide. So at some point in time, they unjack him, they get him out of the Matrix. He actually gets rescued. And it's like basically they did it all over again. They did the whole thing where like, he gets out, pulls the thing out of his mouth, looking around. Then before you hear the belt snap off on his back. And they actually pick him up. And now at this time, like you even see a robot carry Neal off. But before he does, he looks down and he feels it. He even recognizes like that's Trinity. As he's flying off, like he goes to like, reach his hand out. And she actually for a moment starts to reach her hand out into him. And her eyes even open up for a brief second. Get him on the ship with the new people. That program or whatever that's supposed to be Morpheus, they go back into the Matrix to try to basically help him like get back to the way he was. Because basically when they released him, he was like in critical condition, or like at least they called it like, I believe, an addiction at the time, like him just being so caught up in the Matrix for so long. Having to do the fight and everything. Then they go, I believe, like to the Nile. And if I'm missaying it, it's basically a new town. It's not Zion anymore. I think it's like Nile or Nile. And to everybody in the comments, you can correct me, my mistake. I actually got to go back and rewatch this. But then he actually runs into Niobe. And Niobe is much older. And basically it's revealed to him that basically he was entrapped back into the Matrix again for 60 years. So they actually had him like there the entire time. So goes to see Niobe. Now she's like basically like this, almost like this head of region. Like she basically runs everything. She's older. She actually needs him to help her kind of walk around for a bit. And even Niobe chews out the new group for, even taking the risk that they did to actually try to go and rescue Neo. And she just basically kind of goes into the whole thing, basically saying like, I never thought you was the one, and whoop de whoop de whoop. Still don't think you are. And at one point, basically kind of makes it as though like, I don't want no trouble. We basically cultivated or created like basically a life, a new town, new people. Basically, Zion had fallen. It was more or less like, they became more is basically us versus the machines. Whereas with Niobe, she's more of actually trying to, you basically work together with machines, because during that whole 60-year time frame, there was still battles that was going on. Even it got to the point where the robots were fighting each other. And then at one point, Morpheus has assumed like head region at the time. But like I said, they basically alluded to the statue and then them looking. It's basically, to me, like what I got from that was like a moral, like he passed. So as far as exactly how he died, they didn't specify it. But that's where I think it comes back to what I was saying earlier, basically them with the Matrix Online game and how he died. Because in the game, he actually got killed by assassins. He was basically fighting to release Neal. That was the whole point of the game, that Neal was in fact alive and that he was being held, and that Morpheus was basically trying to let him know, like, hey, if you don't do this, I'm going to basically blow this up. And it's not the typical kind of bomb. It's basically a type of bomb that's like an encryption code that would reveal the Matrix to anybody, both plugged and unplugged. They said an assassin was like some fly thing, and somehow, some way he was running, and thing got out the fence and just capped him and killed him right there. Niobe was in that game too. So I'm going to lean towards that still, or at least if you could look at it from both universes, is basically Morpheus died somehow, some way, whether it was old age, maybe he got killed during, trying to be Region. Because his whole thought process, like what Niobe was saying, was that he thought that Neal fixed everything, that everything was good and that nobody needed to do anything. But, they ended up having to like leave Zion, they had to create this new town. And you see how they started to harvest, they grew strawberries, they doing all this stuff. But Neal wanted Niobe's help, and she didn't give it to him. She even put him like in a imprisonment for the moment, took away the ship from the crew. And I was kind of like disappointed, not so much like as if like as far as the character, her character, or the act. It was just, I don't know, like after everything that she's been through, you would think she would have been more willing to help Neo. But then on the flip side, trying to look at it from her standpoint, and it was kind of even the point of like what Neil Patrick Harris, or his actor, was basically saying, is if you thought that basically the world's going to go on with or without you. So that meaning to like both the good and the bad. So even after Neo did what he did in like Matrix Revolutions, it still left so much. It wasn't just like all the machines just suddenly dropped. It was still wars. It was still this that they had to deal with. It was not even like quote unquote like Zion's whole thing was like, it's us against them. It's the man versus the machines. It was man versus man too. So looking back on that, I can see where she could potentially have hardened herself and just kind of standoffish, and she's trying to protect this piece of where, because like she said, it's like it's quiet. You hear her talk about that, like not even just so much like the noises like in the Matrix, but literally outside, no more killing, no more machines, and all this other stuff. So he basically wants to go back and get Trinity. At one point in time, when he goes back into the Matrix, he kind of does like a quick little cameo. He talks to her. That's when Neil Patrick Harris's character pops out, and he basically talks to him and lets him know like the whole purpose. He's like, oh, I thought you'd be grateful. We thought you'd be grateful. And they show him like, because basically Neil's eyes, if you remember, it was destroyed because of Agent Smith. Like they're giving him new eyes and fixing his body, and you can see him actually in pain as they're trying to like repair him, the wounds and everything. And basically, I guess throughout their time, the interactions that Neo and Trinity has had together, they were actually creating a different type of power, different type of force or something. And machines want that. They've been wanting, and they even purposely, they're like, why do we create this bullet time? Why do we create moments where, things seem hopeless, or this is to drive from emotion, as if it drive from power. So as if we can get more power, then as if you basically help fueling us. And it was that moment when he was trying to fight him, like he couldn't do anything to him. Prior before that fight, it was actually cool. So, because actually before that, they actually ran into the new guy who was basically Agent Smith. And I was pumped when I saw that fight, because I was like, I wanted to see that again. I wanted to see Agent Smith and Neal fight again. And seeing Neal's powers, you definitely see where, and I think they did that on purpose. It's like he's not just back to immediately being like, OP, full stack, just doing everything perfect. Like he's sitting there like struggling and, like can't really do this, can't really move. Even that part where there's like, you think you could fly? He does that. You see the floor make that wave or that ripple, but then he's like, yeah, no, I can't do it. I like how they did that. They did that so well. It basically demonstrated the fact that he just literally just got it. But what I still like, though, it wasn't like this whole of a movie buildup. Like he's already like he got most of his powers. He's remembering his fighting ability, because when they first released him, he got jacked back into the Matrix to fight Morpheus to kind of get the blood flowing, because the addiction was actually killing him. And they were like, well, hey, maybe we have a fight, it'll help bring, and it did. It sparked him with his first fight with Morpheus. He did that force push thing, and after that, so yeah, fight Agent Smith. After a little fighting her, goes to see Trinity. After going to see Trinity, that's when Neil Patrick Harris pops up and basically tells the whole situation and whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. So they had no choice. They had to leave. Then after that, they're like, I still want to get Trinity. They go back. Their ship was, they were forced to go back. And after everything, it was like this bird machine thing that came down. It was basically the daughter of the engineers, if you remember back in the Matrix 3. She's grown up and she actually wants to help get Trinity out of there. She knew what the machines were going to do. Like basically it just shows that no matter what, like it was never intended to make that full piece. They were still trying to find their way to, exist or to take advantage of the human life and everything. So the plan was basically to get Trinity out, but the big thing came down to it being her choice. If she didn't do it, then it's not going to mean anything. And so they basically have that meet up, and he basically tells like, it's hard for me to say everything. I wish the Oracle was here to tell you this. And by the way, the Oracle, actually, she's no longer in this too. She wasn't even in this at all. She was mentioned, but somewhere along the way, she got lost. I even believe the architect, because they actually had to replace him and even use like basically Neil Patrick Harris at that point, the counselor. Talks to her about the whole situation, and she sit there and she's like, thinking about it. Then she's like, I wish I could, this, that. But then she starts to walk away. But then she starts having those sparks in that moment. And then you see her husband, because at this point, at least as far as in the Matrix, Trinity, both in the beginning of the movie and up to this point, she was basically with 2 kids and, husband. And you see her like looking at Neo, want to be there. The husband's grabbing on her arm, like, come on, let's go. And then like you see him start getting aggressive. It almost reminded me of that scene from the Animatrix where they tell the dude who was running track field and stuff like, as if like sit down in the chair, and like he was getting up. And then she looks at him and is like, I get tired of hearing that name. My name is not Tiffany, it's Trinity. And as if you better take your hand off. And dudes start going aggro on her. She beats the crap out of him. They reunite. They get out of there. But of course, because basically the deal was, he was convincing Neil Patrick Harris's character is if I free her, you got to let us go. But if I don't, as if, well, then you could take us both. All the while, the group did get their ship back. They did go on this mission. Like I said, the bird came down. She also came and talked to Trinity and Niobe. Talked to Niobe, explained what needed to be done. So now she was like, well, basically sending that same crew back out to go recover Trinity to basically try to stop this whole thing from happening. So continuing as they're, going through their stuff within the Matrix, outside of the Matrix, they basically went back to the 2 pods where Trinity still resided to get her out. And they had to do it in a way to where it was like they had to swap, use the other girl to kind of hook things up and get everything to work. But they did everything. They were escaping. Then it was like the programs was like using different people as like just dropping them out of windows, like just anything to stop Neo and Trinity from getting out, or the gang. What I like too with the whole Matrix, I like what they did, because you know how usually when the people are like in their chairs and they're hooked up into the matrix, you know, you might see like a little nudge here and there, and like, you know, sorry, a little blood, but like even when Neal's getting the crap beat out of him, like you really see like him like violently like spitting blood. It's like I like how much emphasis they put on like the whole thing of your mind makes it real, and like they're really wrenching in that chair, even up to that point where they were dropping people out the windows. You can actually see at one point the car crashes, they're being grabbed and stuff, and then like on the outside while one of them is in the chair, blood is running down her nose, like she's looking badly beat. I'm like, oh, they about to kill her, like what's about to happen? So they basically that crew gets out, but Neal and Trinity are still there. They're trying to make their way out. They get to the top of the building, and at one point, you know, he's sitting there doing the bullet thing, but like I said, he's like, you know, struggling with it. Trinity literally like grabs his body as he's doing all this and like trying to lift him over so they can get to like the next area. Then there's a missile. He flips the missile over to the other chopper, but then it's like SWAT teams coming up. Another chopper's coming. But even before, they had that moment though where they looked at each other because she had got injured while they was getting away on her bike. After that whole thing with Neil Patrick and all that, they actually managed to get away. And before that, and I forgot to add that in there, Agent Smith, for a brief moment, actually does a temporary alliance with Neal as he does the final step, as if to say, hey, if I can convince her to be with me, and, you know, hey, we free, but if we don't, then, you know, I'm yours as well as she is. That happens. Trinity, you know, starts to fight, you know, Neal and all of them fight, just that little caption. And Smith actually comes in and actually beats up Neil Patrick Harris's character. Like all that stuff where like he could freeze everything, even Neal, like it didn't affect Smith at all. He even shoots him, and then he says something where they quote like, you know, I guess our temporary alliance has ended. But he's like, one thing I learned is like, you know, you're not basically like, you're not the only one, like as if the only one, like anybody could be that, like, you know, even myself. And then he just transformed back into somebody else. So coming back to the part now of Rooftop, you know, and like I said, her being injured, they thought they had to unhook her for a moment, but they still kept her plugged in. And she just looks, I thought from that moment when they had the sunrise and that music playing, because I was getting sad, I was like, oh my God, don't tell me like she's actually dying and, you know, we don't know it. And then she was like, it's so beautiful, you know, and as if like, you know, I don't want no other reality. So they basically take the leap of faith and they jump off the building. And the crazy thing, or the kicker, was that Trinity was the one that actually helped them fly, because he's looking at her while hanging up and looking at her like, I'm not doing this. And so they sat there and they fly off. Then you see the scene where they're unplugged, so they're basically back into, you know, the real world, and they're both looking at each other, and like you could just feel that, you know, like, I don't know, like for me, like I like love stories, I like romance. I'm a hopeless romantic in the sense of like I love to see like people have that happy ending, even like in movies, and like to go through everything that they've been through, like they've been through hell and back, both separately as Trinity, even like if you watch like Animatrix and stuff like that, to where she got to the actual main franchise, to what Neal been through, to where he went, for them to have actually sat there and worked together. They loved each other, they was there for each other, up until twice where she almost died in Matrix Reloaded, then actually dying in Matrix Revolutions. You know, they both died. It's like they basically went to hell and back, and yet they managed to somehow like be together. So like that was a good thing for me to see, and to even see that they both have powers, because when they go back into the Matrix again as the ending, you see, you know, like this building just blow up out of nowhere, and it's basically Neil Patrick Harris's character, and he's like, oh, that's a nice entrance, and you know, this, that, and the third. And it was like, you know, and she kept like, Trinity kept snapping her fingers, and like, you know, she kicked him, his jaw was completely like clean off, snapped her fingers, his jaw comes back. So I'm guessing at this point, like she has, you know, really developed her powers. I don't know how much time had went by since then, since they returned. And then he basically goes to say something towards the effect of like, you know, hey, you can do what you want. You could paint these pictures, you can shoot, you could make the clouds, you know, rain, but as if, you know, ultimately, like, you know, I'm basically gonna, this ain't gonna end well for you. And as if, you know, and then they sat there and they, you know, smirked it off, and then you see both of them flying off. and then that's the end. It basically gave you that same retro feel to the first Matrix movie when they first fly off. And from the looks of it, I got a feeling, I don't know if they're really going to talk about it as much, but I'm pretty safe to say I think there's going to be another Matrix movie, or at least I'm banking on it, only because I just really want to see it. And then again, maybe that's also another possible reality, that maybe they just want to keep it open to say that, you know, hey, they're back, you know, so anything could happen. They could have just kept fighting, you know, leaving it to the audience's imagination as far as, you know, what happens from this point on. But I'm really hoping, because it still leaves a lot to desire, you know, as if like, well, why they appoint Neal Patrick Harris's character, because basically he's like the new, basically like the end all be all. He can send the signals, he can do this, he can do that. He's like one of the biggest programs in the whole like cyber world. So what is his role from this point on? What is his aim from here on out? Is there someone bigger than him? We still haven't gotten an explanation as far as like what is between the whole machines fighting each other. Where was that at? And then needless to say, we got that cryptic situation with Agent Smith where he says, you know, anybody could be it, and this is like our, like, you know, basically our last thing for a moment, and then he just suddenly teleports or basically turns back into somebody else. So like, does that mean he can take over people now? Can he just pop in as anybody? When they had originally show, like all of a sudden after Agent Smith and all of them, you know, Agent Smith, you know, having a temporary alliance with Neo, helping him, training all of them, getting out. You just see the swarm of people just coming out, I guess, when they said shut down. And I'm like, is this Smith already, like, basically PTSD back to the Matrix Reloaded in 3, where he makes all these clones, or who are these people? But it was literally the system trying to control everybody and use them, basically trying to capture. So it's like, it's still a lot of questions, a lot of things big to be, you know, admired, to be figured out. But all in all, I have to say, outside of the popular opinion or of what everybody said, I definitely give this video or this movie a 9.5 out of 10, just for the fact of it being a classic. For me, I was always a Matrix fan. I love the Matrix movies. I watched the Animatrix. I had a good time doing that. I played Matrix, the original that was on PS2, to the Matrix of Path of Neal. Matrix of Path of Neal was the one I actually did start to finish. And for the most part, I enjoyed the music and everything, because Wachowski's was involved in that. He was behind the music score and everything too. So like, it basically gave that authentic feel to what the Matrix was and is. And they even got a new game, or at least the trailer of what's coming out. And I like the fact that a lot of people are like, it's kind of like, you know, they thrown in like Warner Brothers. There's the whole red pill thing, the blue thing, and, you know, trying to basically, it's like some kind of psychological or like conspiracy like mumble. But it was like, it worked, or at least for me, it worked for me. It was something good for me to see. If I had, and the reason I don't give it like a 10 out of 10, because the only thing I would say is that I wish this would have came up sooner, because the last movie was back in 2003. I would have loved to have seen this maybe between like 2006, 2007, you know, after high school, hell, maybe even 2010 at the latest. But they still even said to give it that high of a score to me. They did it well, and they actually, despite the age gap, the time gap, they actually still formulated a good story plot as a whole, to where you can actually sit there and enjoy it. You can appreciate it. And if you also played The Matrix Online, you can actually tie in a bit of what, at least as far as for the sake of, if you wanted to say about like, at least with Morpheus and him passing. So all in all, guys, I strongly recommend, if you are a Matrix fan and you're also a person that's open-minded, you're willing to go on with a clear mind, then I'll say go ahead and check that out. It's definitely worth it. That is the same as I would even say as like the Cowboy Bebop remake, despite the popular opinion. But to everybody, guys, what were your thoughts on this review and the spoilers and the recap of The Matrix? Guys, please don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to your boy at Heemz Gaming. If you have suggestions on other movies, videos, and stuff to do reviews on, please leave the comments below. Let your boy know. Leave some good feedback for your boy. The watch time is greatly appreciated. To anybody that wants to catch your boy stream, I stream Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Late starts are between 6:15 and 6:30. Everybody, don't forget to check out your boy for updates and more on Instagram as well as on Discord and Twitter. Don't forget to check out the merch. We definitely got hats, shirts, hoodies, phone cases, both for the Android and the Apple. And of course, guys, you don't have to, but it's greatly appreciated when you guys donate. Feel free to donate bits to the channel, or if you guys would like to go ahead and sit there and donate to your boys' PayPal, go ahead and do that, guys, and we will actually use that opportunity to get more games, more equipment to ultimately create for you guys the entertainment that you all deserve. But to everybody, guys, this is your boy Heemz Gaming with another content video. I will see you guys soon, more content. To everybody out there, peace. Till the next vid.